Welcome to the show, formerly known as Every Horror Movie on Netflix, temporarily known as Every Horror Movie on A24, but for just this night, this one shining moment, known as Every Paranormal Activity Movie Ever. I'm Patrick, and I'm here not with Chris and Steven, but with a whole gaggle of very special guests. I'm here with Allyson with a Y.
Hello.
And from the It Slays podcast, our friends to the Northeast, Rowan.
Hello.
And Xylia.
Hi.
Over the past few weeks, the four of us have watched all 7 movies from the Paranormal Activity franchise, and Chris and Steven wanted absolutely nothing to do with that mission, which I don't blame them for. So the four of us are here to review and discuss this whole franchise on a little double date episode. But before we get into the Paranormal Activity franchise, I want to start off tonight with a little horror catch-up, as we usually do at the top of every episode. I'm going to be recording a regular, non-special EHMON episode very shortly after this, so the listeners will hear my catch-up very soon. So I'm going to defer to y'all tonight. Rowan, Xylia, what have you all been watching or reading or experiencing in the horror world lately?
So I've done a little bit of watching. Obviously, I wanted to set my spooky season off right. So, as always, I started off with a little bit of Christine to get the fall vibes going, which was fantastic. I watched a movie on Tubi that was actually pretty good called 645, which was a direct to Blu-ray release during COVID that was directed by a former chief creative at Disney, and it's like this low budget, funny enough we're doing this episode, kind of Christopher Landon whodunit time travel slasher movie. But I figure what I kind of highlight that people may not think of as necessarily horror is I watched the 4 newest Wes Anderson shorts that came to Netflix, which really are just Wes Anderson doing his version of horror. And they were fantastic. I was super impressed with this. I mean, obviously, like everyone else, I love Wes Anderson. But yeah, like, they just have the, his personality, his look to it. But they're actually, like, pretty, like, dark and disturbing when you get to the bottoms of the stories. So, yeah, that's really all I've been watching horror-wise right now. And tons of other stuff I won't bore you with because I'm talking about it on our podcast and people are going to be like, geez. What about you, Xylia?
So I watched Christine with you. That's the first time I've actually ever seen Christine.
Yes.
I don't remember if I saw the end. I have a very bad memory. But that was actually really good. I really, really enjoyed it. And besides the billion paranormal activities I've been watching, including the 4 that we watched today, the last horror movie I think I watched was for your podcast, Rowan, Lone Wolf. You did some sort of episode on it for the It Slays podcast, and it may have been the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, a horror movie about furries.
Oh. But it wasn't even just about like, it was, I highly encourage you to waste an hour of your time and watch it, because I think my Letterboxd review just said no.
All right, so Allyson, I know last time you were on the show, you had a list of spooky podcast recommendations that our listeners love. Do you have any podcasts for us tonight?
Always. I am always finding new spooky podcasts. My current favorite podcast, which might be now my favorite podcast ever, is called the Night Owl Podcast. And it is incredible. So it's this guy's passion project. He, as a hobby, is a paranormal researcher, and he just kind of fell into it and decided to create a podcast out of it. And it's not like going to a place and just trying to capture ghosts. He goes to these places, and like the first episode of a location, because most locations that he investigates, there's multiple episodes. The first episode is always about interviewing people and their experiences and getting a bit of the history of the location. And the second episode is then like his team going in. And it's so interesting because it's really just getting the stories of the hauntings. It's not about trying to, capture like spooky evidence. It's all about helping people and helping them understand what's happening so that they can have a better relationship with the ghosts that they live and or work with. And it's really incredible. So that's an amazing podcast, the Night Owl Podcast. And then for a fictional podcast, like a month or two ago, I listened to this audio horror drama called The Manawak Caves. And it's about this guy who, when he was younger, there was like a mysterious death in his hometown. And he gets kind of pulled back by unseen forces to investigate and look into it. And it was actually co-produced by Blumhouse.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's really, really well done. Very well acted, very well produced. It's television for your ears. It's very immersive. So yeah, those are my recommendations. The Night Owl Podcast and the Manawak Caves.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, for your horror catch-up. That brings us to the main attraction, the reason that we're here tonight, reviewing every Paranormal Activity movie ever. And before we dive into reviewing the individual movies, I want to hear a bit about each of your backgrounds with this franchise. Personally, I followed this franchise pretty closely for a while because, as you'll hear, I loved the first one when it first came out. And I kept up with the franchise through the fifth movie, but then fell off until Allyson suggested reviewing the franchise for EHMON. And usually this is my idea. Usually it's my stupid idea to review every movie for a franchise. So I want to start with you, Allyson. What was your past experience with this franchise, and what possessed you to suggest that we watch them all for the show?
Yeah, so I saw the first three in theaters. It was like a tradition for my younger sister and I to go see all of them in theaters. And after I fell off, I was just curious. And I've been curious all these years. And then Patrick, when you were on It Slays reviewing the first two, I was like a little jealous. And I was like, I really want to revisit that, but I feel like I need to watch them all. And I apologize for that.
So yeah, as you mentioned, Rowan and Xylia and I have some history with this series. I was on an episode of their podcast, It Slays, which EHMON fans should know these guys already because we talk about them all the time. Rowan has been on the show a couple of times. But if you're not familiar with them, they have an awesome horror movie review podcast. And they're quite prolific. They review much more often than we do. So go check them out if you need a fix, especially between EHMON episodes. But anyways, you guys reviewed Paranormal Activity 1 and 2 for the podcast a couple years ago, and you graciously invited me on. And we had a blast. So I know that you two had at least seen the first two movies before I asked you to join in on this mission for EHMON. I guess I'll start with you, Xylia, because you went after Rowan on Horror Catch-Up. Had you seen any of the other 5 movies before we did this for EHMON? And why did you want to jump on board for this? What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with me? That's a great question. No, because anybody who listened to the episode of It Slays knows that maybe I wasn't the biggest fan of Paranormal Activity, and that perhaps is how Patrick and I formed the, greatest feud in horror podcast history.
Mm-hmm. Enmity. I would say there's enmity here between us.
So after I watched those, I never went back and watched any more until now. And basically, Rowan was just mentioning one day how he was going to be on the podcast and Allyson was going to be on. I was like, oh my God, we should do a double date. I don't know what was going on in my head at the time, but I'm here. I survived it. So yeah.
You were on board for the cute factor, basically.
Exactly. It's all about the vibes.
It's been very cute vibes so far. Rowan, how about you? How many Paranormal Activity movies had you seen before doing this? What were your feelings about the franchise going in?
So I had only seen those two when we did that episode. That was my first time ever seeing them. I guess I was too much of an edgelord or something. Like when these came out, you guys were watching Paranormal Activity, and my mom was taking me to the hostel and stuff. So I kind of avoided it. I was like, it seems kind of like like it's like a kids horror movie or something. And like Xylia, I also was not a fan of these when we reviewed them. I mean, maybe it's changed, maybe it hasn't. We'll see. And then the story of my life, I own all these, and I've just never watched them. So it was nice finally getting to crack the old box set open and actually watch them.
I remember we had a conversation when I was on your podcast where I nosed into your finances to ask how much you spent on that box set, as if you would remember.
No, it was cheap. It's like because I only got the cheap Walmart one. I think it was only like $40, $30, $40.
Oh, a deal. But at the time, there were only what, 6 probably at the time you got the box.
It was the only 6. It was pre-COVID BC.
Yeah, because I remember I was on your show in 2021, and we were all kind of stunned at the time that a new one had come out just then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, let's get into it. As on our previous franchise review episodes, there's no spoiler room tonight. We're going to be doing relatively abbreviated reviews of these movies compared to our usual length, so we're not going to compartmentalize spoilers for each one. So if you want to preserve the mystery of what happens at the end of Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension, this is not the podcast for you. We're going to go movie by movie here, and we'll each give each film our standard view it, cue it, or screw it rating before we move on to the next one. And then we're going to wrap things up by each giving the entire franchise itself a view it, cue it, or screw it as well. So let's jump in here. 2007's Paranormal Activity, which that release date even is a bit of a misnomer because it premiered in 2007 and didn't actually see wide release until 2009. But, I kind of want to start with Allyson here because, again, Rowan, Xylia, you guys and I have talked about this one before. Allyson, what were your thoughts on this viewing of the first Paranormal Activity?
Oh, I thought it still hit. I loved Paranormal Activity the first time I saw it. I've loved the first Paranormal Activity every time I've seen it. It's really great at not showing you things, which for me historically is what scares me the most. And I think that's what works for me. And it felt so fresh. It reminded me of how, not to quite the same intensity, but how like the Blair Witch Project made me feel and still makes me feel. It felt fresh. It felt new. It was like, wow, I can't believe I've never really seen anything like this before. I love it. And I will stand by that movie. Fight me.
Well, let's call on a couple people who might. Rowan, Xylia. I know.
I don't want to fight either of you. I'm sorry.
We're gonna have a fun fight. It's gonna be a cute fight. It's going to go from a date night to a date fight right now. Y'all didn't enjoy this movie so much when we reviewed it a couple years ago. How did you feel this time?
So I will say that I kind of switched on it this time around. Because if you remember from the Slays episode, I hated the first one, and I did like the second one a little better. And this time around, I did enjoy the first one a little more. I think Allyson kind of really put it well, where I was focusing more on let me really look for what's going on in the background, even though there really isn't anything going on. But, I just think I was willing to get on its vibe this time and, just kind of immerse myself in the, maybe I'm just missing something and there's something to the left of me or to the right of me I'm not looking at. And I think it does a very good job of setting that up, no matter if I think that, Micah looks like Nev from Catfish.
Yeah, he does.
I still haven't seen Catfish.
Oh, well, you're missing out on just seasons and seasons of good times.
You have to watch the episode where he takes the guy's phone and just throws it in the lake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Scandalous.
Well, Xylia, what did you think about the movie this time around?
Okay, so I intentionally didn't go back and listen to our episode to see what I thought last time, because I didn't want to sway my opinion now. It was interesting in the way that I was now able to see it within the context of the rest of the franchise. And there were a couple things that were, like, I guess, explained that made sense more now. I'm still not a huge fan of it. I'm very much about, like, set design and things like that. Honestly, it looked like a poorly outfitted porn set. It was so bare. It looked like they went to this place called Excess Cargo and just got, like, the most random shit ever. Yeah, it didn't do for me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. As y'all know, and when I say y'all, I mean even just like EHMON listeners in general, because I feel like I talk about this movie with some regularity, even just on our podcast when we're not talking about Paranormal Activity. But as Allyson said, it still hits. I had one of my favorite theatrical experiences of all time with this movie where, as I said on y'all's podcast, I had the ultimate hipster experience where I'm pretty sure this opened in Ann Arbor near us here. It was one of the first, I think, 12 cities that it opened in the U.S., and I saw it at our local art house theater. I was one of possibly the only two people in the theater. Certainly in my memory, at the end, when it cuts to black, it was just me and my friend, and I was scared fucking shitless. And then it ruined my life. For several months after that, I was just afraid any noise I heard in my apartment was the fucking demon, which at that time, I'm pretty sure the name Toby never comes up in that movie, but I thought Toby was coming up the stairs. It still works for me. It's that weird kind of liminal space after Blair Witch, where like Blair Witch was a huge hit. That movie is still amazing, but then for whatever reason, there weren't a ton of like imitators of it for I think over a decade. And then this comes out right at the beginning of the era where everyone all of a sudden did have a camera in their hands all of the time and kind of exploited that. It was the first movie where that actually felt really possible, that somebody could have a camera, be obsessed with it, and just be recording all this shit around their house. It feels plausible in ways that like a lot of the other ones that come after don't.
Yeah.
And in ways that a lot of found footage horror in general don't.
Right.
How did you all feel about the relationships in this movie? Like, I mean, it's basically just, we've got Katie, we've got Mika. It's basically two characters. We're following them and their performances throughout the movie. These actors are not known. They have not become known since this franchise for anything other than continuing to be written into this franchise. How do y'all feel about them and their relationships? Or relationship?
Awful. Yeah, he has no boundaries. He like constantly gaslights her, just like he's such a dick.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to me, I think it seems like a general consensus. No one likes him in this franchise. That he kind of really got the hate. And I was thinking, Xylia was talking about this looking like a porn set. I really felt like this entire movie was just this man's goal of trying to make homemade porn with his fiance. Because I think he offered it like at least like 5 times, where he's like, "Hey, I got this video camera, you know."
And all she does is keep being like, "Please stop recording."
Yeah.
But I did connect with him because he also really just wants a Ouija board in his house, which is a notorious argument.
Absolutely not.
In this household, because I would love one. Xylia won't let me have one. The fight has been brought on It Slays podcast many a times.
Did you see how this one burst into flames? Hell no.
Yeah, that's a big no for our household as well.
Yeah.
That's a consensus though between
Thank
the two
you for
of
being on my side. Yeah, thank you.
I think we do have to make sure, when we're talking about the small cast of characters is the guy that plays the psychic.
He's great.
Mm-hmm. Probably the smartest character maybe in this whole series of movies.
Yeah, because he gets the fuck out.
Yeah, he's like, nah, I'm just leaving. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I wish you the best. I understand you need help. Not going to be from me.
Yep.
He's not a psychic. He's a local demonologist.
Even better.
Call him by his name.
Right? Exactly. I actually looked up how to get an exorcism here. And you just have to contact the Catholic Church. There's like the Archdiocese of Nova Scotia. They have exorcism protocol. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah.
Look, that actually occurred to me in the process of watching these movies. I was like, can you imagine how many like weird calls the Catholic Church gets about that shit, and probably how many priests have to go out and take it seriously? Or I mean, probably they do take it seriously, but it's
they
interesting
do.
to me.
Yeah. From my understanding. So what worked, one thing that also just worked about this movie for me in general is I love ghosts and demons. That's my genre of horror. And like, this is just so ripe for that. It's like the perfect horror movie for me. You don't really see anything. It's all suggested. It's all whispers. It's like, that's what's so scary to me, is the unknown. And I think, not to get too far into it, but like, that's where the rest of the franchise starts to unravel for me, is learning more and more about it takes the fear away for me personally.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I like this, because the relationship between them feels quite real, all things considered, and it's you're just kind of watching a relationship unravel for most of the movie. You're certainly never really seeing shit until her face turns into a spooky demon in the literal final frame of the thing, which I don't like very much. But up until that, very subtle, very unsettling, and just feels uncomfortable. Like it could happen in my fucking house, and that was what stressed me out for so long afterwards.
Yes, and like I found myself just like rooting for them. Like I'm just like, just get out of there. Like like do the smart thing. Like try to get out of this situation. You know, and just being really upset that it just completely took over.
And there are like hints at mythology, like she talks about what happened to her and her sister when they were younger, but there's not really any answers, which is another thing that I enjoy about it. And another thing that gets undone spectacularly over the following 6 movies.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, like you talked about, you know, that you didn't overly enjoy the ending in this one. This is the only one I watched the alternate ending to. Which actually I thought worked better than
it was better.
This one. And I mean, maybe that's just like my overall dislike, I guess, of like, you know, kind of just this movie in general, because I think the alternate ending's like more of a just like a typical slasher horror ending. Like, 'cause if I remember right, she basically just like stabs him, even though she's possessed, and it's just like, it's bloody, like it's more.
Doesn't she slit her throat?
Yeah, and she and she like you see everything, and you know, I think I call that the A24 effect. It's just we're so conditioned now to want these like real downer endings, and maybe that's the most downer ending possible.
Oh, I was going to say, so there are 2 alternate endings. There is the one where she slashes her throat at the end, and then there's the one where I think she does still kill him, and then like just kind of rocks by the bed, like it does the typical effect where it speeds up time, and then the police come in and shoot her.
Oh yes, yeah,
and that's the end of the movie. They kill her.
I remember
the
seeing
police
that
kill
one
her.
too.
Yeah, I
like the throat slit one.
I don't like either of those personally.
I did have a big question I came out of watching this, though, that I wanted to poise for everyone. Is your partner being possessed a deal breaker?
Oh, shit. Wow, that's...
If they're like a 9 out of 10, and this is just like that one point that they get taken off.
She's a 10, but she's possessed.
Yeah.
That's a tough quandary there. I mean, of course, like I would stick by them, but like, fuck, it just seems so. It just seems like you're fighting a losing battle at that point.
I have so many questions about this scenario. It's like, is this like a major demon or like a bureaucratic demon?
Middle management.
Lesser middle management demon. I feel like those are a lot easier. Maybe a demon might bring some improvements to personality.
Oh, I like that.
It really depends on the demon for me.
Xylia, if Rowan were possessed,
could he be easily exorcised? I don't know if I'm willing to go through like a really rough, brutal, long exorcism that may or may not result in Rowan coming back. But if it's just an easy one, then yeah, I would keep him around.
And Rowan, answer your own fucked up question.
Oh yeah. No, I love Xylia to death, but guess what?
Oh,
I'm like the psychic. I'm
He's
getting
packing
the fuck
his
out.
bags.
Rude.
I'll call an exorcist on my way out, though.
Oh, thanks.
All right, well, let's call an exorcist on our way out of our reviews of this movie. Rowan, you said you kind of changed your tune a little bit on it this time, so I'll call on you first. Would you view, cue, or screw Paranormal Activity?
So, even though I still don't overly like this one, I'm going to give it a view it simply because, I mean, this is like in the pantheon now for horror movies. Like, you kind of have to see this. This is like, Blair Witch Project now. Like, if you haven't seen Paranormal Activity, people just look at you weird. And so, I give it a view. It's simply on, like, kind of the historical importance of it now. And, really, in 2023, like, the rise of Blumhouse, like, this is kind of at those beginnings of them taking over. So, yeah, I think just the historical importance of that. What about you, Allyson?
I'm a solid view it for it. I mean, view it with all capital letters. It's a classic. It's just good. Like, it's not overdone, and I like that. Xylia, what do you give it?
I'm like Rowan, so understanding it within like the cultural context of horror movies, I'm gonna give it a cue it. Don't hate me. Do I think that people will look at me funny because I said I didn't watch this movie? No. And I think a lot of things we always ran into when I was on It Slays is like nostalgia for certain films. Like Allyson was saying that they go and like watch it with their sister, and you're saying like you had this experience after where you were scared to death in your house. Like, I don't have that emotional attachment, so I think that kind of kills it for me a little bit. But yeah, I would give it. You should watch it. So I'll say cue it. I'm not gonna get all like hyped up about it. What about you, Patrick?
I mean, no surprise, a view it for me. Again, one of the. I said this on y'all's show. Like, it's not necessarily one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, but it certainly has scared me more than any movie I've ever seen. It may be a sort of pedantic distinction, but it's meaningful for me. I had such a strong, intense reaction to this, and I still love it and vibe with it. All 3 or 4 or whatever times that I've seen it, it just pulls off something pretty impressive and then kicks off a really awful trend that hasn't, I think still really hasn't stopped, honestly. We're still getting this bullshit. People are still trying to resummon this magic. So, but regardless, I'll give it a view it.
I'm really interested now that you're talking about this because I feel like Rowan and I will have like very opposite opinions of you two.
I'm curious to see where we go from here for sure, because Allyson and I haven't even talked too much about the rest of the franchise. So I'm curious to hear really everyone's thoughts on the rest. We're starting to plunge towards unknown territory here. But our next one is, of course, Paranormal Activity 2. Came out in 2010, just 1 year after the wide release of the first one. This is where we really delve into Christy, Katie's sister. She's one of the main characters of this movie. And in the course of the movie, we learned this all started because Christy's son, Hunter, was the first male born to the family since the 1930s, because someone in their family reneged on a deal to give their firstborn son to a devil back in the day. And we get into a whole thing where her dipshit husband transfers the curse from Christy to Katie, and Katie goes and takes Hunter after the events of the first movie. How did everybody feel about this one? I like it a whole lot fucking less than the first one. I'll say that.
Well, I'll go, because I did say that my opinions changed on these two.
Yeah.
So this was the one that I liked the most out of 1 and 2. And I ended up liking this less than the first one this time around. And it's really just the dad.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to give me like 3 hours of a rant here, like most of my notes are just like, this fucking dad. Like a quick summary is the goatee. It's just like automatic, like I manage a local bar goatee. It's just ridiculous. I mean, but we have that. We have, like, you know, him firing the housekeeper.
Stupid move.
Yeah, just stupid move. See, anybody that out loud tells people that he names his dick the Kraken, like, automatically, I don't feel bad that your house is being haunted. Did you see all the, like, African art in this house? And you know what? Colonizers are gonna get it, so.
No, Rowan, it's funny because you said that maybe you thought that we might have opposing opinions all night, but in my notes here, one of the handful of notes I wrote about this movie was fewer interesting characters, dad is a dick.
Yeah, I can never. I just feel like, how can you feel bad for a family that has an on-call allergist? So
might be necessary.
I mean, maybe.
Allyson and Xylia, did the dad, Daniel, I think is his name, piss you off? How did you feel about the movie in general? And did he ruin it for you?
I felt indifferent to him, to be honest.
Yeah, same. No big feelings either way.
The dad just triggered the men in the room.
Apparently. I hadn't like made a second thought about him, to be honest, until right now.
Same.
Rowan, maybe that makes us the toxic males.
Yeah, maybe. There's something going on here.
You're the colonizers who are going to get it.
Oh no. But no, there's very little that's memorable to me about this movie. I mean, I love the scene in the kitchen where all the pots and pans fall suddenly, you know, great weird gag. You can't watch this movie and not remember the pool cleaner flipping out of the pool.
Pool cleaner.
It's the best part.
But it's still kind of stupid. Like, why is Toby fucking with the pool cleaner overnight, you know?
That's by far the most memorable part of the entire movie, is the pool cleaner for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I first saw this, like, I liked it. You know, it wasn't like the same level of like the first one, but I didn't think it was bad. And I think that's kind of how I still feel. I like it in the sense that I like that it was consistent with the rules of the world. Mm-hmm. I like that it was consistent with like the hints of the lore that was set up in the first one and how it continued. After watching the whole series, though, not as much of a fan, because I was like, you didn't have to just keep doing the same thing. Like, I liked that the second one was consistent with the first, but that at that point, it's just like, maybe we can just change it up a little bit, you know?
When I watch movies, I always have like just incredibly random thoughts. So like all the notes I have are just super random. But one of my thoughts was, if someone broke into my house, like they thought someone had broken in the beginning and totally fucking trashed it, that's like adding insult to injury. And I would be extra angry about that. Mm-hmm. That was another highlight for me. At least keep my house clean if you're going to break into it.
I was going to say, it's probably important to note with this one, too, is that this is the entry of Christopher Landon's influence into these. He was the writer on this one, which, you know, he's pretty much in the franchise in some capacity for the rest of these, which I thought was interesting because I did think the writing was a little stronger. There was kind of, they didn't really explore it enough that I thought it was really worth being in there, but like they did have like some interesting undercurrents of, you know, stuff about like late postpartum and stuff, and I thought there was like some good parallels going on there. And probably for the best that they didn't heavily explore it, because, I just, Paranormal Activity isn't that serious. So I think that's a little more serious than they were really willing to get. But I think just having like a baby in it in general kind of upped the stakes a bit. It was kind of stuff I liked. Like, I enjoyed how the baby's room had like all the mirrors. So I spent the entire time looking at all the different mirrors. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I was like, when I watched this for the It Slays podcast, I probably didn't look at the bathroom mirror. Let me stare at the bathroom mirror the entire time. And, I think they were able to do that stuff. Plus, kids' toys, man. When kids' toys are moving by themselves, automatically creepy.
So creepy. Yeah.
Interesting. I find that a very overplayed trope. I'm like, okay, it's another kid's toy that is activating and playing a weird song by itself. Okay.
But as a kid, did you ever have toys that just randomly went off on their own?
No, that's you and your haunted house, my dear.
No. When I was a kid, my little sister had this doll called Amazing Ally, and she kept it in a bin in my room. And one night I woke up to her saying, "Hi, my name's Ally. Do you want to be friends?" And I was like, "No."
Yeah, that's fucking creepy.
No.
Yeah, what in the child's play is going on here?
Right. Wow. So toys going off is a trigger point for me.
Okay. Wow.
Mine's less scary than that, because I was going to say all I can think about is, I don't know if it was Xylia or someone else, bought me when it was cool, I guess, to have.
Oh my God.
The Zach Galifianakis talking bobblehead from the original Hangover.
Oh my God.
And the batteries were going in it, and it just kept going off doing the Three Best Friends song, like in the middle of the night. And that was terror in itself.
Yikes.
It wasn't even the batteries. It was, we lived in this really fucked up house in St. John's, and the floor was like legitimately like tilted. It was just really old, and anytime the people upstairs walked like in the hallway or like walked up in their apartment, it would like shake this bobblehead, and then the bobblehead would go off talking about the three best friends, and yeah, it would be like all hours of the day, and we couldn't figure out how to turn it off.
Oh no.
So I donated it.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good call.
Yeah.
Give that demon to someone else.
That's right.
Right? What a thing to possess.
Truly. But yeah, this one, I think Allyson mentioned, is kind of the one where it digs into the lore a little more, and we start digging into this whole history of what happened with Katie and Christy. And I dislike the movie because of that. This one is not so egregious in the way it does that, but I just get bothered by the way the next 4 or 5 movies just keep digging more and more for little like scraps of information about the history of this family, why this all happened. And again, it starts to undo what I like about the first one, which is you don't know why it's happening. And it's Rowan, it's like the Nightmare on Elm Street. It's like Freddy Krueger, the bastard child of 1,000 maniacs or whatever. It's like, I didn't need to know that about Freddy. He was better when he was just a weird guy in a sweater who showed up in your dreams, So this kind of starts a trend that bothers me more as it goes on. It's not particularly bad in this film in particular, but it's the start of something I don't like.
In this film, like when I first saw it, I thought it was a strength, but then as the series goes on, then it starts to it changes how I feel about this movie.
Yeah.
I think it's like less, and that's exactly what I think too. I think it's like if they had stopped here, the lore aspect wouldn't have been so bad, but they've like twisted it and just like taken it like way too far, and it makes makes this movie affected by that. Because you're like, it's the root.
Yeah.
All evil.
So, Xylia, would you view Q or screw Paranormal Activity 2?
I would screw it. What about you, Allyson?
I'd cue it. What about you, Patrick?
I don't know. This is sort of borderline for me, but because it leaves so little impression on me, I didn't enjoy it much any of the, I think, 3 now times that I've watched it. I guess I'm going to go with a screw. It's not offensive in any way, certainly not in some of the ways that the later movies are to me, but it's just... the only reason I watched it 3 times is that because I had to watch it for a podcast 2 of those times. So I'm going to go with screw. How about you, Rowan?
I'm going to give it a cue it. Like I said, obviously this time around, I like the first one a little better than this. I did like the use of the basement in this one and the night vision in the basement. We kind of get like the full out night vision with this. And, you know, this was kind of an interesting one where like at the end, it didn't finalize with a jump scare. Like it kind of let the camera play out a bit, which I thought was like an interesting thing to do. So I did like that stuff, but like you guys said, like it's just kind of, to me, real middle of the road. Like I don't think anything too exciting happens, and you know my hatred for that dad. So.
All right, well, let's move on to Paranormal Activity 3. And it's interesting to me, like, they were really cranking these out for a bit here. Like, 2009, the first one gets a wide release. Second one comes out 2010, and then the third one's out 2011. We go back to the 80s. We're mostly on VHS for this whole movie, and we're viewing tapes of Katie and Christy's childhood with their mom, Julie, and her boyfriend, Dennis. Christy is developing a weird relationship with Toby, the demon, and eventually we find out that the girl's grandmother is part of a coven that grooms women to have sons that they can sacrifice to Toby. How did y'all feel about this one, doing some 80s throwback found footage?
My first thought is the boyfriend looks weirdly like Mika from the first movie.
Right?
That was
absolutely
so creepy.
I don't remember that. I need to look him up now.
I thought the same thing, and in one of the further movies where they replay that scene from this one, I was like, wait, is that Mika? And then Rowan had to remind me.
Whoa, he really does.
Yeah.
He does.
I don't know why that didn't occur to me before. Poor Dennis, though. Okay, like...
Dennis did not deserve anything.
Dennis was a good guy, and he got
dude.
Absolutely fucked over by just happening to date Julie.
Being a good bonus dad.
Yeah.
Like...
Her mom didn't love Dennis, though, so maybe there's more to it.
Yeah, but her mom is not a good person also.
Well, yes, but she basically insinuated that he was trying to steal her money. Now, what does she do for a living as someone who affords that gigantic house by herself?
Well, it was the 80s, so, you know.
She grooms women to have sons they can sacrifice to the devil. That's what she does.
Is that lucrative?
I don't know. Probably. Yeah.
Okay.
There's scarcity there.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so, you know, I made it a note for this one. I was like, okay, so now now we've not been able to avoid like a little more improved camera quality, even though we're going back to the 80s, which I thought was like one of the things that really didn't work with this was it looked way too good for like 80s footage. I thought like the parents, I was like, they don't look very 80s.
No.
Like nothing other than them just be like telling me it's in the 80s. I was like, yeah, this doesn't feel like anything like that.
No.
The babysitter looked like if like a caricature of someone from the 80s.
Yeah.
Which is probably the closest anything comes to looking like it's in the 80s in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, that was the thing, like Rome was saying, the parents, even especially the scene in the bedroom, like even just like the decor and the set of the bedroom, it looked like it was 2023.
I wasn't the underwear, the lingerie is not period appropriate.
Right.
But no, I wholeheartedly agree with all of that. And I mean, also going back to camera use, it's so implausible that anyone in the 80s would be filming this much, this consistently. You know, it makes sense in these more contemporary set movies.
The digital age.
You just are running a camera all the time, but it's like, really? You just got VHS running constantly?
That'd take a lot of tape.
Exactly.
Yeah, at least he was like, Dennis was like a videographer. So at least in that sense, it made sense.
I had a note, because like I did like the trick of like, oh, I'm going to put a camera on the oscillating fan. And
I love that.
I was like, that's cool. But I did make a note. I was like, Dennis just out here creating cinematography.
Dennis, our king.
I mean, really though, if only Mika had met him, because I said also Dennis has the pleasure of being the first person to get his partner to agree to have sex on video. So
it's a franchise milestone, really.
Yeah, like really, that's all any of these guys in any of these movies are trying to do, it seems.
Fake sex tapes. But no, I've been talking shit about some things other than Dennis, but there's a lot that I enjoyed about this movie. The cast, the characters are all fairly well drawn, pretty enjoyable, pretty engaging, decent performances. And yeah, the oscillating fan fucking rules. Again, if you've seen this movie, you're going to remember that. You're going to remember the fucking awesome scene where everything in the kitchen floats up to the ceiling. The fan pans back to the foyer and then pans back and everything fucking drops from the ceiling. Don't know how they did it. Maybe it's all CG. I would like to look it up.
That can't be
I should
CG.
look it up. But also how did they get everything in that room up to the ceiling in that pan, you know? I don't know. It's great though. It rules.
And I know you guys kind of said with the other ones that this was kind of your pet peeve on them, but I did enjoy this one. I thought did a pretty good job, like using the footage and stuff to like build an actual like timeline and narrative of what's going on, where it didn't seem as random as the other two. Like they were really trying. You could tell they were in full franchise mode, where they were like trying to craft this story so you could follow it, like relate the first and second movie to this one. So I did appreciate that.
Yeah, and another thing I appreciate about this one, talking about like more positive aspects of it, is I like that the ending just kind of goes full bonkers. You know, I really appreciated that. I remember watching it the first time and being like, oh, hell yes. I just wish that that's where the franchise would have ended it, you know? Because like I appreciated them going for broke, and I was just like, a coven of witches and like they're all just hanging out at this house. Okay, this is great.
Yeah, because we wind up at the grandma's house, and kind of the twist, because we haven't realized this to this point, is that the grandma is orchestrating, kind of ferrying kids to this demon, Toby Asmodeus, as we eventually find out his name is. And great kind of reveal where the camera kind of whip pans at one point. There's just a small group, I think maybe 6 or 8 creepy looking women, like slowly walking towards the camera. That's a great moment, you know. And that I think is a good example of the world building, where all of a sudden it expands in this unexpected way, where you're like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, there's not a ton of explanation for it, because then Dennis gets killed. I think the mom. What happens to the mom?
She gets killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she gets
And then
killed,
the witches just walk away with Katie and Christy, and it's like, it's time. We're going to prepare you. Whatever. Good stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Not over-explained, just weird fucking shit happening where you're left to kind of form your own theories. And I like that.
I wouldn't be a good guest either if I didn't bring up that this movie has the use of Bloody Mary in it, and we have someone on the podcast that has serious Bloody Mary trauma in their past.
Serious Bloody Mary
trauma.
Oh no.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard this before, Xylia. Are you comfortable sharing?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
My story has remained the same the 21 years I've known Rowan. He doesn't believe me because he is does not believe in anything supernatural, which I get. But so basically me, my best friend at the time, and our other friend Brittany, we're just casually hanging out in the gym of our elementary school. This was in grade 5 or 6. I think it was grade 5. And it was in a basement. And it was very notoriously a haunted place. The school had been around since the 1900s, etc. Anyways, we had just learned about Bloody Mary because I think we had just started watching horror movies. And we went into the bathroom in this gym. So how it worked was there was a door and then a really short hallway and then another door. And then it would open up into a locker room. And then in the locker room, there was another door and that was for the bathroom. And the bathroom only had 2 stalls. It was very small. So Megan, my best friend at the time, and I went into the bathroom part, and Brittany was on the other side of the door in the locker room. And the important thing to know is the door didn't push out, you had to pull it in towards you. Seems like a fire hazard, but that's okay. So we're in there and we're making fun of Bloody Mary and we're okay, let's say it. And we said Bloody Mary the appropriate amount of times, which I won't do right now. And basically nothing happened. And we're I told you it's fucking stupid, blah, blah, blah. And then within 15 seconds, the toilet started flushing. Oh. There was nobody here. This was 6 o'clock on an evening. The toilet started flushing, and then the fucking light bulb above the mirror turned red. And we were oh my God. What? And we were trying to get out, but you have to pull the door into you. So we had to go further into the fucking bathroom. We basically knock Brittany down. We're oh my God, run. It was horrifying. And I will I even asked Megan a couple years ago, do you remember that? And she recalled it just how I did. This is when we were literal children. And yeah, it was horrifying. I have no explanation for it whatsoever. But Rowan said collective hallucination, but I don't think so.
See, Xylia, this is why, so, I mean, for the most part, I am a Rowan. I don't really believe in this stuff, but your story is why I also don't fuck with it. I don't.
Exactly.
I don't like the idea of ghost hunts. I don't like the idea of playing Bloody Mary. I don't want a Ouija board in the house because I'm
exactly.
I don't believe in that shit, but I'm also not going to invite it in.
I'm not going to open that portal that may or may not exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for reinforcing my worldview.
I'm the same. I'm not really a ghost person or anything like that, but there are some things that I've had experiences I'm nah, I'm too superstitious to fuck with that, so no.
Allyson, as a ghost person, what are your thoughts on Bloody Mary?
I would never do it. Not in a million years, because I don't I don't think anything would happen, but I'm a baby. And it's just even if it's not Bloody Mary herself, you never know if there's a ghost hanging out who's let me fuck with them. Let me teach them a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thing. I don't think it was Bloody Mary herself, but it was definitely some fucking fucked up presence. They were probably just fucked.
It was probably a ghost kid who was I'm bored as shit. Thank God.
I just live in this locker room.
Right.
Yeah.
Different franchise, but I think relevant question, and probably just all the same answers. But would anybody say Candyman the requisite number of times?
No,
okay. Absolutely
me
not.
Neither. Rowan,
you should go in the bathroom right now and see what happens.
Do it.
I haven't done the trauma yet. Maybe someday I'll pop in Urban Legend 2 Bloody Mary for her and we'll watch it together.
Anytime there's a Bloody Mary thing, I'm X, I'm back away.
All right. Well, now that we've all unpacked our Bloody Mary trauma or lack thereof, Rowan, would you view, cue, or screw Paranormal Activity 3?
So I'm going to give this one a cue it also. I think it's inoffensive. We didn't bring up this is it. This is the naming of our demon Toby in this one. But like I said, I thought there was things I like in it with the narrative and the story. I didn't necessarily love the look of it just because it looked a little clean. This is the epitome of scary kids' toys in this series because we got a Teddy Ruxpin, and Teddy Ruxpin is just creepy in general. So, yeah. And then really, this will always be in my mind because the ghost was making some sound while we watched it, and Xylia turned to me and just said, "Is that demon bonking his baloney?" And apparently,
oh yeah, because he kind of looked like he was.
So
wait.
remember this is the baloney bonk.
Just to confirm my suspicion, is this a euphemism for masturbation that I've never heard before?
Yeah, it's from a show or a movie or something. I can't remember what it was.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah. And it just kind of stuck because it was
because it's
ridiculous.
Great. Yeah, that's entering the lexicon.
What about you, Patrick?
It's hard because I feel like by the normal metrics of EHMON, it would probably be a Q for me. But I think I'm just grading on a curve, and I'm going to go with that for the franchise. By the standards of the franchise, I'll give it a view it. It's like a low view it. It's fun, you know. I remembered enjoying it the first time around, and I enjoyed it well enough on the second viewing. Whatever, not a great horror movie, but there's plenty of memorable stuff in it. It expands the lore in a way that doesn't upset me too much, like mostly in an interesting and kind of open-ended way that unsettles me a little more. And yeah, it gives me some memorable moments along the way. So I'll give it a view it. Allyson, how about you?
Yeah, I think going by this logic of grading it based on the entire franchise and not just on like what I would normally say is I would also give it a view it because other than the original, I think it's the only other one that I would have a strong recommendation for. Not a strong recommendation for, I'm like, if you're going to watch any of the other movies in the Paranormal Activity franchise, watch the third one. And that's how I feel.
Yeah, honestly, I'm giving it a view it mostly because I feel like I'm just about to be negative as fuck from here on out. So I was like, all right,
Same.
I'm going to be not just one note. Xylia, how about you?
I think I would give it I'd give it a view it. It was decent.
All right, kids. Well, we have almost reached the half point of this journey. Paranormal Activity 4, 2012. We're still cranking out one a year at this point. We kind of shift off the family for a bit. We focus on a family who is taking care of a very weird and creepy kid named Robbie while his mom is in the hospital. His mom, of course, turns out to be Katie, who I said to Allyson at some point in this watching process, like, Katie Featherston has to be the luckiest, like, C-D list actress of the past 10, 20 years, just getting gigs in this franchise over and over again, where she, like, in some cases walks on and says no lines or a couple of lines. But anyways, we end up finding out that this family's kid, we're kind of led to think that this creepy kid, Robbie, is actually Hunter, the kid that Katie stole in the second movie. Turns out that their kid, who we know as Wyatt for most of the movie, is actually Hunter, the kid that Katie stole from her sister. He's slowly corrupted by this creepy kid, Robbie. And, yeah, that's kind of the meat of the fourth one. We've got some webcams in this because it's 2012 now, and we gotta.
It's the webcam one.
Yeah, we gotta do the Zoom.
I call
thing.
it the YouTubeification of Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, and it is kind of an emphasis on kind of interesting to see the way the technology changes, and they kind of lean into the technology of the times as the franchise goes on. But yeah, how did we feel about this one? My notes, not to tip my hand, but my notes say, mostly like watching paint dry. So that'll give you a summary of how I felt about this one.
I think after we watched it, I said, well, that was a real snooze fest.
Yeah, dude.
The story's so convoluted with, like, Wyatt being adopted and he's actually Hunter, and where the fuck did Robbie come from then? Like, who's Robbie?
Yeah.
My question too.
Yeah. And if Katie took Hunter, why did he end up
How did they
for
get them?
adoption? Like,
Right. How did they get him? That's what I said. The kid's only 6.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
That would have to have been a process.
It's all just kind of mystery and convolution for mystery and convolution's sake. Like, they're trying to create intrigue that isn't really there.
This was the movie where I started being like, I want to see something more than a family being terrorized. I want to see people like fight back or like have a chance at figuring out what's going on and not just be brutally murdered at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the same. This is kind of where it gets really redundant, this movie, I find. And I do have a note about how basically this is the start of the demon dropping so many things from the ceiling. And it's like, I can only watch that over and over again so many times. And yeah, it's like a family in a big ass house. And it's like, it felt like I'd already seen this before.
Yeah, like the ostensible highlights are a chandelier falling from the ceiling and a knife falling from the ceiling. The knife being the better gag because it kind of mysteriously flies up to the ceiling at one point, and then it's kind of, whatever, I guess Chekhov's knife or whatever, you're waiting for it to fall again at some point, and it does, and it's fine. and that's all I can really say about that.
It sounds to me, Allyson, like you wanted more of a parody, not so much a kickback.
Not a kickback. Best quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought this one was kind of odd. I said, earlier I said the YouTubeification, but to me this is where you can kind of see like the studio teeth sink in. Because, I was thinking, as much as I love Catherine Newton, like, we've been lucky enough that, like, I like my found footage movies with people that will never have careers. I'm sorry, but I just don't want you in front of a camera again. And that's what's always kind of effective about found footage. Mm-hmm. So
that's fair.
Coming to this for the first time where, like, Catherine Newton is, like, a big deal now. Like, she's really on her way up to being kind of this, like, A-list actress. I mean, she's in Ant-Man, she like all, Freaky. She's been in all this other stuff. So, like, I found it really distracting that you had someone so known. Obviously, when this came out, it would have been a little less distracting. But for me, I just found that I was like, oh, okay. Like, now, people with, like, I don't want to say, like, actual acting talent, but people that are going to go on and have careers are, like, trying to enter this franchise and they're at their beginnings, like every humble actor, like Johnny Depp or something. I don't know.
I also thought that this movie started, so his excuse for like filming everything initially, that was the start of the weird reasons why they were recording things all the time.
Agreed.
And it was just like, I swear, my computer just records everything.
Yeah.
Like, it was so fucking weird.
This was definitely the first one where that felt like a real stretch for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And out of all the men, shouldn't this be the one where it's believable that the guy's just trying to videotape sex?
Right.
I just thought it was weird. I'm like, it's just like these like teenagers that obviously this guy that I said was kind of like a discount Johnny Simmons, the nerdy one from Jennifer's Body.
Oh.
I thought he had that vibe, but I was just kind of like, he obviously like has a thing for the lead, and I was just like, yeah, if anyone, this is the guy that should be all, like, this is the generation, this is like the time that this would be a thing. Like,
right.
Yeah, let's get the webcam going or whatever. And I was like, oh, it's interesting that they just took it out of the series now.
Yeah, I mean, as I indicated when we were talking about 3 is kind of where the start of the real implausibility of the filming is for me. But yeah, it's ridiculous. And I mean, there's not a paranormal explanation for the computer just happening to film all the time, right? It just like
right now.
literally is doing that, I think.
It makes no sense.
But guys, this one had a cat. So this one,
yeah.
This was one of the high points of the franchise.
Which, if I remember correctly, did not get attacked like the dogs in the franchise do, which was very sad.
Yeah,
I do like.
Yeah, maybe.
I do like the scene where you're like think it's going to be a ghost, but it's actually just like the cat being a cat, and then it drops down. I was like, okay, that's cute. Like.
This is also the Kinect movie. We haven't talked about the use of the Kinect in this.
Oh, what is Kinect? I've never even heard of it.
It was an Xbox gaming system.
Oh, it was the Kinect movie. Oh my god.
Yeah, it was like designed to so it projects all those little dots of light and then detects the movements of bodies so that it can do like Wii sort of stuff. And in this one, is used to detect the demon a few times. But I felt like... And this is going to be weird because 2 movies from now, I'm going to say that a similar gimmick was really overused and I hated it. But I kind of felt like it was underused in this. Like you just kind of see the outline of a demon a few times. And it's like, okay, this is actually kind of a creepy visual, seeing the dots projected over everything in the room. And then it just felt like weirdly underexploited.
I hated that.
Did you?
Oh. I hated the dots.
I actually kind of appreciated that effect.
I also really liked it. Yeah,
because it was subtle. It looked really subtle.
Was it subtle though? See, I felt the opposite because it was just like a whole. I know, like not the ghost or the demon, but the whole room was just like constantly covered in dots every time it's dark.
Well, I thought like the movement of the demon was subtle.
More subtle.
Like, yeah,
I agree with that. More subtle than in the future ones.
Right. Yes. I liked it because it was based in some degree of reality because that's how that system actually works. So it felt plausible as opposed to, again, we're going to talk about something else in a couple of movies here that felt really fucking stupid.
Right. Like imagine like being in a dark room with the Kinect, all of that stuff projecting, and then seeing something very softly like move through it when there's nothing there. I would shit my pants.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. Feels based in reality. And again, I haven't owned a Kinect, so I don't know, like, I don't have like a personal connection to that fear, but I know it's a real thing that people do own, and it sounds like a pretty terrifying application of that technology.
I was going to say, I thought it was kind of off-putting for me in this one. This one was kind of the first one in the series that they do like the Shining homage, which like I just think takes you out.
Oh, that's right, with the bike, the little bike.
Yeah,
with the bike on the carpet, and I was just like, well,
that was weird.
If this is found footage, I don't want you referencing other horror movies in it. Like, it was just really, really bizarre to me. Them doing that.
Yeah, whenever there's like a notable reference to a film in any other film, I'm always like, okay, 1, be subtle with it, and 2, make sure you're like somewhere close to that movie's level if you're gonna do that. Like, don't be Paranormal Activity 4 and be drawing attention, like comparing yourself to one of the greatest fucking horror movies from one of the greatest directors of all time. Like, you're setting yourself up for failure and making people think about your movie being even worse than they may already be thinking it is.
On the It's Lays podcast, we call that the Colton rule. That's his number one rule is you can't reference movies better than yours.
Yeah. Oh, I thought the Colton rule was you can't reference any A24 movie.
That's probably what he means in general. But
I better watch out. He's gonna leave me a threatening voice.
He probably will. I'm sure he will.
Scare me.
I was gonna say positive for me though was we did get just a slapper. We got Dragula in this one, putting the budget to good use.
I did love their dance party. That was fun.
Allison loves Dragula. I don't remember. Was that in this? I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're dancing.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the living room.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, with the kid. Yeah.
Which is actually, now that I think about it, I didn't even have this as a note. I think this is one of the only real times in any of these movies so far that you like see anybody having like actual
joy.
fun.
Yeah.
Like
True.
in this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
I did think, because we're dealing with teenagers and we got to see like some rooms and stuff. I thought it's probably a really interesting job. I want the job where you go in to make the set look messy. You're like, I have to make this bedroom look messy. For me, it would just be me existing in it, and it would automatically turn into a mess. But I just thought that would be an interesting job.
That's how it's set up. They set it up initially like that. So I don't think I never. Basically, when I was going to university, my whole plan was I was going to go for set design, which tends to like just happen to be an interest that I continue. And then last minute, I was like, no, I'm just going to go get a degree in psychology instead. Totally veer off. But yeah, so I love set design.
As someone who toyed with a film major before settling on a journalism major, I relate.
Yeah.
The last note I want to make about this movie is also we have another big like kind of jump scary moment with the coven. And it's like, it's fine, but it's like we already did this last time.
Right.
And you were like,
Right.
okay, this worked last time. Let's just put even more witches in this time around. And I mean, it's
so many.
It's still spooky, but it's like you did this already, you know?
I thought they were kind of like zombie looking at the end, like the ending. I'm like, oh, we're throwing, because I had a note. I was like, oh, are we throwing zombies into this franchise, or like what's going on?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's the one. It feels like the pivot point to me where it just really feels like they're already starting to run out of ideas, and that just gets worse for at least a couple movies here, which I guess is a good segue to me tipping my hand. Screw it. Xylia, what is your review?
Definitely a screw it.
Screw it. Okay.
Yeah, Rowan?
Yeah, this is going to be a screw it for me also. I had two main points to screw it at. It was one, there is no such thing as a teenager that thinks 38 is young. And two, I talked about the friend / boyfriend of Catherine Newton's character kind of looking like this discount other actor. The dad kind of looking like a bad Ryan Reynolds lookalike.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I said he looked like Ryan Reynolds if I ordered it from Shein.
Chris would say the poor man's Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
That's right. We call it Big 8 around here.
Big 8. What the fuck does that mean?
Big 8 is it's pop made in Atlantic Canada, and it's just like
Rip-off
It's like
flavors.
rip-off flavors, like Mountain Dew or orange or something.
Whoa.
But it's called Big 8.
Wow.
And it's cheap,
Yeah.
cheap.
I love that.
What about you, Allyson?
I'm a screw it too. It gave me nothing new that I needed from this franchise.
Fair.
All right. Well, with a unanimous screw it for Paranormal Activity 4, we'll move on to Paranormal Activity 5, 2014. You know, they're giving themselves a little bit of room to really work on this one, a whole 2 years between films
Really
this
perfecting
time.
it.
Yeah. And this time they've shaken things up by moving off of white people for the first time in the franchise.
Yes.
We have a primarily Latino lead cast, group of friends who are investigating strange happenings in the apartment of a witch below them, who of course turns out to be part of the coven. We yet again dig back into the whole Katie and Christie mythology, and we even tie back to Paranormal Activity 2. Allie, the daughter of the man that Rowan and I hated from Paranormal Activity 2, and Allyson and Xylia felt ambivalent about, has been researching things and finds out that the coven is trying to create an army of firstborn sons known as the Marked Ones, which is where we get the subtitle of this movie, Paranormal Activity, The Marked Ones. And Jesse, one of our protagonists, is marked. I think the other big notable plot note is we wind up back in the grandma's house from Paranormal Activity 3 for the climax. Kind of go through a weird time portal, which is a interesting new addition.
Portal.
Yeah, time and space portal for the first time in the series. And we get yet another coven attack, which felt overplayed in 4 and felt even more overplayed in this one to me. How did you all feel about the Marked Ones?
I liked this one.
Oh,
I liked this one.
yes.
As did I.
Bring the hot takes. I see Allison's look of surprise. I feel like this is the one where the opposing teams are really forming up. So hit us.
The lines in the sand.
Yes, let's go. Let's fight.
I mean, directed by Christopher Landon. I am a Christopher Landon fan.
Wait, hold on. Let me pause you right there. Is Christopher Landon known for other things outside of this franchise? I'm ignorant.
Yeah,
of
Happy
him.
Death Day.
Yes.
Would be like his big one.
And he did the sequel too, right?
Yes, he did.
Okay, yeah.
And
those movies rule.
So a fan, and he also did Freaky with Catherine Newton.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so this was the first one that he directed, and I will say super excited for him to direct Scream 7. But that also means in Scream 7 you're probably getting some time travel, because I don't think he doesn't write about time travel.
See, I wasn't keen on the time travel aspect of this, because it seemed like we're adding just so many things onto the pile of the story here. But Rowan was very excited about the time travel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you were into
it. I'm a sucker for just cheesy. Like, to me, I like this because I thought it was a good reset. I thought, like you said, Patrick, I was like, all right, enough with the white people. Like, let's do something different. And this one was fun. This had, I mean, Christopher Landon is known for horror comedies. And I was like, this is fun. It's like youthful. It's energetic. I was just like, as this series continued to go on from all the previous entries, like, it just, to me, felt like it got sleepier and sleepier. And they just really didn't know what to do. Where even if time travel doesn't work for you, even if, like, the silliness doesn't work for you, like, to me, I would think most people can, like, respect the attempt at being like, I'm doing something totally different. Let's just shake it up a bit.
I was going to say, I think this could, like, be a standalone movie, and perhaps that would be better if it were. Something I really liked about this, and it's kind of, Allyson touched on it before, was like, okay, cool. It's like this, like, rich family in a huge house. This is in a, like, apartment complex, which I thought was a bit more interesting, because if you've ever lived in an apartment building, your neighbors make noise and you can't really, like, just fucking, like, bust into their apartment to find out what the creepy noises are. So I really liked the change of venue a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I came out of the gate sounding negative about this. And I mean, overall, I wasn't crazy about it. But what I will give it a lot of credit for is, again, pretty solid group of characters. I like when you give me a group of characters who feel like they're real, who feel like their relationships are real. And this one accomplished that. I was invested in these people and what they were doing. It was just they weren't doing a whole hell of a lot for most of the movie.
Yeah, I feel like I would have probably liked this more if it had been a standalone movie. It was just more fatigue with, like, people just getting fucked up and, like, not having any power in the situation. I really liked that they brought the character from the second movie back, but also feel like that was such a wasted opportunity. It was like, clearly this woman, since she was traumatized in her youth, has been doing research. And I already said this to Patrick before, after we watched this, I want the fucking movie where she goes and takes down the goddamn coven. Like, I want that movie. Why would you give us this nugget of information that, because anybody could know something about them, but she knows, she's been trying to figure it out, obviously for a reason. You know, her whole family was murdered / kidnapped. I want that movie. So that was kind of frustrating to me.
But instead, she's just there to provide exposition, basically.
Exactly. It felt like such a waste, and like, not like, it didn't give the other characters any more power than they had before. And I don't know. I'm just tired of people just getting splat.
I'm trying to unpack my reaction to the time/space travel thing, because obviously I've said that I like when these movies don't explain a lot and they kind of leave you with something weird and surprising, like The Coven in 3. But I think what bothered me about it is that it has to go back to fucking Katie and Mika again, because he goes through this weird portal and winds up back at their house at the end of Paranormal Activity 1. Again, Katie collecting a paycheck to literally just walk through the kitchen and stab Mika, showing us what happened at the end of 1. And that's the end. I don't know. I guess I would have liked it better if he went through a time and space portal to somewhere we'd never seen before. But instead, it's like still this like compulsive need to tie it back to shit we've already seen. And I don't know. This is the point where I'm really starting to feel like, why does this have to keep tying back to these people? Like, it's Paranormal Activity. Make it an anthology series where we have a different, like, found footage story about a different family, different weird shit happening to them each installment. I don't need all this connective tissue, which was funny because, like, when I first brought this concept up to Chris, he was like, that franchise doesn't really appeal to me because I feel like there's not a lot linking the movies together. And I was like, oh, dude, you have no fucking idea. They're almost too linked together.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say is that's kind of all our faults, I feel, as like, you know, as fans of horror, really. Because isn't this what happens if they don't link it to any of them?
Is we complain.
We're like, fair. What's going on? This is what is this bull crap? Like, it needs to be connected. These characters need to be here. And
the idea of an anthology series where every single one would have been different would have been so much better and more consistent.
That's my feeling about most of these, especially horror franchises. I'm just like, you know, Halloween, I recognize that Halloween 3 is not like a good movie, but it's fucking weird. And I love that it just did something completely different, almost completely disconnected from the first two. And I would like to see that in, I don't even know if there is a franchise that really does that. Like American Horror Story, I love that series because it does something, there's a totally new concept every season, and that's cool. Mm-hmm. But anyways, what are our reviews of this? Xylia, you want to start off?
Sure. Well, I have one other question.
Yes. Ask another question.
How do you feel about the use of the Simon rather than the Ouija board?
Oh, yeah.
It was a fun little gag to me.
I really did like
liked
it.
It was fine. It was fine, yeah.
They should have used that in 3, and that maybe would have brought enjoyment of 3 up more.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool, you know, different gag. And you know what? It's a kid's toy, but it's not the typical, like, playing a creepy little tune while it rolls around the floor. So I liked it as it felt a little different. I liked that.
Yeah. I agree. But back to what I would give it. I would give it view it as a standalone movie. This was probably the one I liked the most out of the entire series.
Okay.
So, yeah. What about you, Rowan?
Yeah, I'm also going to give it a view it. This was... I'd say this might be my favorite one of the series also.
Whoa.
Wow.
How can you not love an ending where you just have a Mexican street gang shooting witches with shotguns and automatic rifles? And I was just like, this is so wild and ridiculous. I am here for it. And yeah, I just loved it. I mean, I could have went on more. I was going to tell you guys all about my cheek, but the funny thing about my cheek, and I'll just leave it there. What about you, Patrick?
Wait, what?
What are you talking about?
That was the big quote from this one, where the guy's talking to the girl about kissing his cheek, and he said, the funny thing about my cheek is it's above my testicles.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, great.
Or how they call it a whore home. It's not a whore house.
Whore home, yes.
Let's make this whorehouse a whore home.
I need like an embroidered pillow that says that.
Right? It probably
get you one.
I don't know. This one's kind of on the borderline for me. Like, I hate to screw it, but cue it seems too high almost. I guess I'm gonna like hitch my boat to y'all's positive train and give it a somewhat grudging cue it. I hate what they did to the dog. Poor Chavo. I'm upset about Chavo.
Horse shit.
Yeah. Poor
Rude.
fucking Chavo. He was
Well, anyone
helpless.
coming from the It Slays podcast knows my feeling on dogs, and I say, get rid of them all.
Wow. Ugh.
This is a cat's world.
You can
like
excuse
both.
yourself from reviews of the last two movies.
I might want to.
Yeah. Allison, what do you rate Paranormal Activity, the marked ones?
I'm so glad that everybody was fairly positive, so I don't have to feel bad about being negative.
Yes,
Screw
queen.
it.
Yes, queen.
Fuck it. Didn't like it.
Thank you for averaging out to the rating that I wanted to give it.
I wanted to like it was the thing, but like by the end of it, I was just like,
The fatigue had set in.
the fatigue. I just want somebody to have a win, you know?
Yeah. All right, well, speaking of fatigue, let's talk about Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension.
Oh my god.
2015, we're back to the annual pacing of the films. This is the first of two to not include Katie Featherston in the cast. But it follows a family. We're still deep in the Katie and Christie mythology, however, the Katie and Christie cinematic universe. It follows a family who lives on the site of the house Katie and Christie grew up in, and their frankly adorable daughter, Layla, is slowly corrupted by Toby, because for some reason her blood is needed to like complete Toby's transformation into an actual demon. There's more portal shit. This time it opens up in the kid's room and leads back to the year 1992 with a young Katie and Christie. And for the first time in the franchise, the tagline is something like, for the first time, you will see the activity. And boy, you do. You see the demons thanks to like some weird camera that they find in the basement of this house that's never explained why it's really able to view
Just a
this
demon
stuff.
camera.
It's a demon camera.
Casual.
I hated it. I was talking about like how I thought the Kinect gimmick was underused, and it's like, again, going back to the first installment of this, I like that you don't see the fucking thing. And in this, it's just a big, stupid CGI creature that gets involved in a final battle. It's like in It Chapter 1. That's what kills It Chapter 1 for me, is the big like CGI final battle with It. And it's like, I didn't need this. I didn't need to see this. You're stretching.
I found when they were outside in the bushes, it really reminded me of Predator. Randomly, that's all I could think of. Because, yeah, I don't know. The shape of the ghost was kind of like, yeah, very much like the vision of Predator.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
Once I was about, like, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes into this, all I could think about was, there's a great show on Netflix called I Think You Should Leave Now.
Yes.
Tim Robinson. And all I could think of is how much I was embodying his character, Carl Havoc. Because I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. Yeah, I had a note where I was like, well, we've reached the point in this series where the ghosts now hold the camera. Because we had shots where the ghost actually deals with the camera. And like you said, it was just, I just don't really get what was going on here. I mean, I do get what was going on. I know that Gregory Plotkin directed this, who isn't a director. He's an editor.
Makes sense.
Who edited Get Out and Happy Death Day. Those are kind of his two big movies he's edited. So, this is a first-time director, which then leads me to think this is probably so much studio interference. This is like the studio being like, hey, we need to see demons. We need, this is what the kids want these days. So, I just really didn't get anything that was going on with this. Like, these movies, at least, like, as they're being haunted, it kind of builds up and builds up. Where, I mean, the first 10 minutes of this movie, the family has the full proof they need this place is haunted. But, as Eddie Murphy says, the white family just says, like we're staying.
Yep.
I have a question. Has anybody ever been dumped over email here?
No. No.
So the brother that came to visit, he was dumped over email.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What a weird way to deal with that. It's like, I'm not being dumped by my boss. Like, you know.
Yeah, this one for me was the most egregious of all of them.
Yes.
The not only, it's like we didn't need to see like the demon, but the effect was horrible. It was like there was nothing scary about it. It's like, at least if you're gonna show me a demon, show me a fucking demon. You know, go all out. Like, I want to see the horns. I want to see the.
I love that you're pounding on the table and we can hear it like Saddam.
No, seriously. It's like, if you're gonna show that much, just like show me what it actually looks like. You know, that would be at least potentially interesting character design.
Yeah, and you get a fucking sheet soaked with holy water thrown over it at the end. It's like,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, which actually, okay, like that. There were like parts of that like bit that I thought were kind of cool. But also it was just like, they're so close. They're so close to, yes, I like thought, I'm like, we finally might get it. No.
I'm kind of on the same page with that ending as Allyson. Like, I didn't hate the ending of like, where it kind of goes into just like stereotypical horror fare. Like, we get a full out demon. He's just like ripping and slashing. And I was like, yeah, that's whatever. It was more the rest of the movie with these like, all I could think of was Before I Wake, like how it was like CGI, like butterflies forming.
Oh,
like,
yeah, the Flanagan
stuff.
movie.
Yeah, which did like pretty much the exact same thing as this.
The Cankerman.
Except better. Yeah. And I was just like, yeah, it all is just like such a mess. I rolled when we finally get the door to the ghost dimension. Because I also felt that this was kind of a horror movie shout out. Because I was like, this is very similar to like
Poltergeist.
Yes, yep. Poltergeist. Yep.
Or something like that. Yep. And I was just like, why are we doing this, guys? Yep. It doesn't look good. Like, yeah, this was a mess. Although I do question, is it a horror movie or is it a Christmas movie?
Could become a Christmas classic.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
This is another one where they really phoned it in on the jump scares. They're all things dropping so many times, like 5 times. And at this point, yeah, I think like the whole movie, they're just like, don't care anymore.
Yeah, it's like they think they've done enough just creating the gimmick of you see it for the first time. And it's just, I don't know, it just feels like the true bottoming out of their absolute lack of ideas or creativity for this franchise. I will give it a couple of points. I think, honestly, this franchise in general has pretty good luck with casting kids. The little girl in this is, again, a strong kid actor and comes off as like a real person and someone you care about and feel bad as she gets corrupted. And the camera concept is sort of cool. I liked when they opened up the camera and you could see all the weird like tech inside the camera. But again, it's just like, why do we have this other than to excuse this atrocious concept of finally showing the thing that's been scary for several movies because you couldn't see it?
I also just, again, the time travel aspect, how like one of the like Christy or her sister, whichever one, is saying what she sees, and it's what they're doing in the room at that point in time. I was just like, this is too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I see food. I see,
Like, I don't know what
TVs.
the purpose of that really was for them to be able to see the future.
Yeah.
And I swear, this is a Paranormal Activity podcast. It's not a podcast about Rowan just talking about Christopher Landon. But I was going to say, this is where he exits the franchise, where he's had his fingers in this franchise from 2 until the marked ones, where he's been writing these. So this is all kind of his design, and that's where I was like, you can tell because this has like 5 writers on it. And I was like, you could tell they just had no idea where to take the time travel stuff, how to work it out, or like even how to make it like silly, like the marked ones. And, you know, I'm sure they were like, oh, we'll take the serious spin. Because I found, like, you know, we were talking about, I did think, like, seeing the inside of the camera was cool. But we're looking at the camera that was in a box of videos with our family from the 80s that we visited in 3. But this camera wasn't in 3. But apparently they had this camera.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense, because in 3, they should have been seeing the demons if they had this demon-looking camera.
Yep.
So, just a mess, really.
Yep.
Full disclosure, I was falling asleep for the last 15 minutes of this, and Rowan just kept repeatedly, like, hitting my knee to try to, like, keep me up at, like, 5-second intervals.
Wait. Yeah. So, actually, and this is a good juncture to ask a question I've been wondering about for the past 2 hours. So y'all watched Paranormal Activities, 4 through 7 in the last 24 hours? What was that?
Yeah, less than, yeah.
Yeah, so how did that break down? Like, when did you sleep?
At like 3 o'clock this morning.
Okay, so and how many did you watch before 3 o'clock this morning?
2.
We watched 2 of them.
And then you watched 2 this, like, afternoon?
2
Yes.
today,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. That's not too bad.
We were well, it was a lot.
You're like, yeah, it was pretty bad, actually.
And Xylia keeps saying that I woke her up. I was more just concerned for her health, because they did bring Bloody Mary back in this one, so I wanted to make sure she didn't pass out.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oof. All right, well, let's put this one to bed. Allyson, would you view it, cue it, or screw it?
Screw it.
Okay.
Rowan.
Wouldn't I be an asshole if I just viewed it just to be a dick?
You would. It would be like big. I mean, honestly, that's just
Yeah.
big AMON energy.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is a screw it. This is the worst of the franchise. Like, this shouldn't have been cleared by Blumhouse, but you know what? They love money. Or it's Paramount by now.
Yeah.
So this is Paramount. Paramount wanted their money. So, yeah, screw this. Xylia, what about you?
Yeah, definitely screw it. It's, according to me, in my humble opinion, the worst in the franchise.
Yeah, I will agree with that wholeheartedly. Another big screw it. Lame. Bad choices.
Snoozer.
All right, so let's bring it home. Finally, they took a little break of 6 years before putting out the, as of now, final installment in the franchise, Paranormal Activity: Next of Kin. And this one really shakes it up. There's no Katie in this movie. Really only kind of shreds of connections to the franchise in general. It may as well be a standalone movie. We've got a new protagonist named Margot, who was abandoned at birth, and she is making a film, because of course you got to have somebody to film this shit, to investigate her family history. She goes to what appears to be an Amish farm after doing some 23andMe shit and finding out she has a relative there. She finds out her mom had sex with someone from outside the community and gave up her child rather than have it turned over to the community. One of the big twists is the community is not actually Amish. They've been passing the demon from mother to daughter over many years, and they want to perform a ritual to transfer it to Margot. This demon is Toby, but it's really not explicitly stated in the movie. It's referred to as Asmodeus, but if you kind of dig into the lore, it is the same demon. It's still Toby. We find out that Margot's mom is now some freaky fucking emaciated golem creature who lives at the bottom of a pit in a church. And I'm just kind of rolling through all the spoilers on these right at the top. Margot escapes in the end, but the demon gets out, wreaks havoc on the farm, possesses Margot's relative, and goes out into the world to start shit. How did we feel about this movie that just You know, at least some of us have complained about just rehashing a lot of the same material, the same family, the same story. How did we feel about just throwing all of that out the window and doing something pretty new?
I will definitely give it props for just one, doing something so different, going very bonkers, like not just a little, very bonkers, refreshing. It feels like somebody from the Paranormal Activity team found this script and was like, what if we bring this into the franchise?
That's so accurate. I didn't think
fact.
of that, but that's probably very, very accurate.
Yeah.
This is a Christopher Landon script.
Oh, okay. So maybe not then.
So he returned, but I kind of suspected. I was like, you know, he's only a writer on this. I think he might have got producing credits on Ghost Dimension. Just, you know, obviously he's got his claws in this franchise. And by this time, I mean, Christopher Landon is a big deal. I was like, there's no way this isn't a script that he had written, you know, and it was in his drawer. And he's like, yeah, I'll tell you this.
That's the vibe that it's giving.
Yeah. But I was going to say, like, I thought this was pretty competent. This one is directed by William Eubank, who did Underwater, a very little scene, but really fantastic underwater horror movie that's basically just alien underwater featuring Kristen Stewart.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I should watch that.
So, yeah, you know, I thought it was good. Now, my question of, is this found footage? I kind of question that a bit. Because I was kind of curious what your opinion is on that. To me, I just don't think I'm mentally prepared for a time where found footage is this true crime Netflix documentary style of shooting.
I mean, that makes sense to me, though.
I know, but I'm just old. It's got to look like VHS to me,
yeah.
Or even like webcam stuff, like Unfriended or something fun like that. I was just like, this just doesn't look found footage. And there was legit scenes that totally threw that out the window. Like when we have Margot like kind of confronting her mom at the top of the barn there. Someone is holding the camera and there's only two of them there and they're in the frame of the camera.
Right.
So they've already broken it out of that. You know, I had said to Xylia, like, the music isn't always diegetic in this, so we're breaking the mold with that.
There's jump scare stings all the time when somebody shows up and it's like, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the camera placement and number of cameras in the room is not in keeping with the found footage aesthetic. Like, especially the dinner scene comes to mind for me, where there's so many cameras doing so many things, and it's like, are you still expecting me to believe that this is one or two people running a camera?
Right.
I don't know what the intention is, because I think they just expect you not to care, actually. But yeah, I don't know. It is weird that it exists, even those kind of strange crossovers into the non-found footage world aside, it is weird to like see found footage crossing into this era where, like, you know, Olivia Rodrigo's new video was shot on like the new iPhone, and you can make a good fucking looking movie with the camera that's in your pocket sometimes. It's a weird moment where like you can make found footage, but it kind of doesn't look that different in some ways from anything else. Or you've got a lot of slow-mo in this movie too, you know, and there's like even an explanation within the story for that a couple of times, but then the moments where it like all of a sudden Zack Snyder's as like Margot's mom, you know, like rips a dude's, I don't know, heart out or whatever, is just like, why? I don't know. Like either like just pick a side, like make a found footage movie or don't at this point.
Right.
With that camera thing, I feel like it was both over and underused.
Yeah.
Because it was set up and they did the explanation in that way, I feel like it was underused because it was then and then like basically at the end. But also, why even have that?
Yep, I'm with you.
This is the kind of chaos I like, though, because I did make it seem like I was like, oh, you know, this movie, but you know what? I'm all for like just people being like, I don't really care about found footage rules. Fuck it. Let's just be chaotic. And, you know, I don't know if this is giving away my rating, but like, I thought the story was pretty strong. Like, it kept my interest. I think, you know, I think it's almost unfair this is in the Paranormal Activity franchise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think this is better than any movie in the Paranormal Activity franchise because it's not really. Like, I just think if this was its own thing, like, this is a movie I would have enjoyed watching and wouldn't have regretted it.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, I'm with you on, like, it being in this franchise is basically a disservice to the film. And, not, you know, whatever. It's not a great movie, but it's kind of better than being associated with this franchise of what I see as diminishing returns up to this point.
I think even the acting, this was actually, like, decent acting where, sorry, I know you love the first one, but the acting was terrible. Like... if you compare just even the first and the last, it's like totally different movies. Like totally went like left field. And I think the story kind of went like that too, because basically the demons like handed off through men or whatever, like associated with possessing men. And now it's women randomly, kind of like...
Yeah.
That where did that come from? Like that's actually the opposite of the lore. I was kind of confused about that part.
Oh, the lore falls the fuck apart.
Yeah.
It's like a fucking wet piece of toilet paper. Like it just movie to movie it's inconsistent.
Right.
Best.
And also it's the same demon supposedly.
Yeah.
But it's been in this woman for a couple of decades.
Yeah, that
while
makes sense.
Still wreaking havoc on other families. Like, yeah, it just doesn't belong in the franchise. With it not, like, separating it from the franchise, I also don't think it's a great movie. It's not my type of horror film, personally. But, like, yeah, there was, like, some solid parts to it. Even if I was like, by the end of it, I was like, God damn it, just another bleak ending. Which I know it's horror, but like, horror can have not happy endings, but like, you know, you just want somebody to like figure out. I mean, at least, you know, Margot escapes only to be traumatized and potentially chased down by this demon for the rest of her life.
Yeah, she has some Sally and Texas Chainsaw Massacre energy at the end of this.
I'm totally opposite. I hate things that end up happy. Just in general. Doesn't even have to be horror. Like, I would rather...
Really hates happiness.
I hate happiness. I don't like romance. Like, I just... Yeah. So I'm completely opposite.
I was going to say, I did like that. I felt this movie also gave me my two icons of this whole franchise. One is Dale.
Dale was great.
They
the
did
best.
Dale dirty. That made me so mad.
They should have kept him alive so they can make like 5 more of
Right.
these. I think Xylia too. I was sold when he couldn't do something because he had his camis on. I'm saying that all the time now.
Also, what was the joke about the pig butt? He was like, nice.
Yes.
Like, it made no... It's like, what?
I wrote that down. He said, do they all have nice butts like that?
Yeah.
Pig fetishist
And
is
then-
maybe his one sin as a character.
Yeah, maybe. And then my other icon was the father, Jacob. Because, you know, Jacob was trying to play it all conservative, but once he got in that camera, I saw the twinkle in his eye. I said to Xylia, like, he's ready for, like, a role in, like a Real Housewives show or something.
Yeah.
He was working the camera.
Yes, he
loved
was.
it.
He looks like
Yeah,
little
I thought-
lad, like the berries and cream little lad.
Yeah.
Although it's really hard whenever you have anything that deals with this, like, you know, like old, for most of the movie, they think they're Amish. Yeah. But I'm like, can we not just every role just cast Ralph Ineson? Because the whole time I was just like waiting for him to go Thomason.
Dude, yeah.
Yes. The funny thing about, I'm so glad later they were like, they're not actually Amish, because one of the things that drove me crazy from the get-go was that they did not have, they had like contemporary accents. And when you meet Amish people, they don't sound like us. They have an accent. And so like that drove me crazy. I was like, all right, I know it's like a weird attention to detail, but this is totally taking me out of it because they just all sound very contemporary.
Yeah. And in that too, this is the kind of horror movie I like. Also opposite. I love any like cult horror movie. So I was here for it.
Cults scare the fuck out of me in a very real way. So
me too. That's why I love it. I love too how Margot asked the girl, "Oh, did you make that dress?" And she's like, "No, I got it at Walmart."
Yeah, that was good.
We have like a very big Mennonite community here randomly. And back in high school, so our mall is like non-existent, it's like a ghost town. But when we were in high school, it would be like the place to be. And you'd always see the Mennonites there just like shopping. So it reminded me of that.
Yeah, I grew up in an area where there was a pretty significant Amish population, very close. And like, my local small town Kmart, we would see Amish people in there all the time.
Yes, all the time. It's like they had nothing else that they were doing. Probably not, though.
Lots of work.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my comments on this have been mostly negative, but I mean, I enjoyed this to a degree. It's certainly original within the context of the franchise. It had characters that I enjoyed. Dale, poor man's Adam Driver. Or you know what? Maybe the middle class man's Adam Driver.
Middle class man, I like that.
He's very accessible to us in the middle class.
I thought this was the best ending.
It's a good ending. I like Toby escaping out into the world and just fucking wreaking absolute havoc on his way.
Yeah.
The chaos was amazing. Like, I felt like the freneticness of it, and just like there's people on fire, and it's just, I'm like, yeah, this is what a demon. Even if when the mom came out of the hole, I did, I was getting a little barbarian vibes going on.
Yes,
but.
I thought of that too.
I was like, this is a way to end a movie. Like, I'm all here for it.
And you know what? I like the ratchet down the well too. I like the little harness that you get into and get ratcheted down the well.
That was
maybe
really
underused.
Stressful.
Actually.
Really stressful.
Yeah, it was stressful, but I felt like you could have gone even harder on the stress of that. But it was still a good gimmick that I don't know if I've seen that specifically before.
I did like how there were the drawings and stuff on the floor in the church, and then that's what happened. It reminded me a lot of like Midsummer.
Yeah.
That's what I said to Patrick when we were watching it.
Yeah.
Now, definitely not done as well, obviously, but I do like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say when Chris like goes down into the well. Also, I thought was like a very high point of the score. The music they played was A+. I really took note of, not diegetic music going on there, and they had an actual, like, throbbing, like, almost Carpenter-esque score going on as he descended, and I was just like, yeah, this is... You really could have just ignored this being found footage and shot it as a normal movie, and I'd be cool with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's like the point where I'm like frustrated that they didn't just do that sooner, like make movies that are this disconnected from the main thread sooner in the franchise.
A part I really love too is when she goes up to that old woman in the chair and she's just fucking like taking the potato peeler to her hand.
Oh yeah,
that would hurt.
That was awful. And again, tapping into a super common fear. Like anytime, I mean, I have fucked my hand up with a peeler before, and I always fear that I'm going to do it more. But just to sit there and fucking like on your thumb over and over again, nasty.
Yeah, that's... Ugh.
All right, Rowan, would you view, cue, or screw Paranormal Activity Next of Kin?
Yeah, this is like a high view it. If there's anything higher than view it, I probably would have given it that. I said Marked Ones was probably my favorite of the franchise. Because I don't, like I said before, I don't really even consider this part of the franchise. I'm just going to call this Next of Kin, and I'm just going to ignore the Paranormal Activity. But yeah, I vibed with it. I thought this was pretty good. Maybe next time I'm on the podcast, I will just get a giant Christopher Landon tattoo or something of his face. Because I'm definitely should be paid by him for just chilling him out like this. What about you, Allyson?
Before this conversation, I would have given it a screw it. After this, I would give it a cue it. Because, well,
Progress.
I didn't consider myself having a great time watching it. Looking back, I can see some stronger aspects of it. So, I'll give it a cue it.
You came up on it. I'll let Paramount know their money went in good places.
Patrick, what about you?
First, I'm surprised that you were thinking about a screw it, because my impression was that you really enjoyed this when we watched it. So I didn't realize you had that bad of a time with it. I'll also give it a cue it though. If it wasn't part of this franchise, it would probably be a different. Actually, no, it wouldn't be a different story. I'd still give it a cue it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the uneasy relationship between found footage and not found footage is disorienting for me, but it has its strengths. There was a lot that I enjoyed about it, so I'll give it a cue it. How about you, Xylia?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a view it. Pretty much what you were saying. Like, I think the franchise would be so much stronger if everything was this good and this like isolated within itself. There's some weird, like, plot things that don't really mesh, but oh well, I can overlook that, especially after sitting through all the other movies that, I think this one, may have been my favorite, but it's like Rowan. I don't even really associate it with Paranormal Activity because it seems just so different, but so view it.
All right. Well, we have now reviewed every Paranormal Activity movie ever, y'all.
Wow.
Congratulations. Thank you. And before we adjourn, as I said at the top of this, I'm curious about your ratings for the franchise as a whole. View it, cue it, or screw it on this franchise. Allyson and Rowan both look contemplative right now. Does anybody just have a rating right off the shoot from the hip? Just one ready to go?
This is like if someone said, should I watch the entire franchise of Paranormal Activity?
Exactly. Like, would you recommend this activity that we've just done? And it doesn't have to be in the same time period. Like, if they want to take a year to do it, whatever. But, like, would you say, yeah, go check that franchise out? Or, like, maybe think about it. Or, like, fuck no, don't do that.
I'd say screw it. Sorry.
No.
Just overall.
I'm also a screw it on watching the whole franchise. I feel very bad about dragging everyone into this because this was my idea. And about halfway through, I was like, oh boy, why did I do this again?
That's okay. I was a willing participant. So.
I will also give the franchise as a whole a screw it, even though there are a few in here that are highlights. Honestly, I would never... Even though I've given view-its to a couple on here, like grading on the curve, I would never recommend, frankly, that anybody watch any movie from this series except the first one. And I expressed as much to Allyson along the way. I was like, I hate doing this. I'm really going to enjoy like recording the podcast and like hanging out with Rowan and Xylia and you, but nah, fuck this. This was bad. It might actually be the worst franchise watch that I've done so far. Actually, no. With the exception of Friday the 13th, which we didn't do an episode on, but that's a bad franchise. Rowan, view it, cue it, or screw it to the Paranormal Activity franchise.
Just when I thought we were good friends, and you gotta talk trash about Friday the 13th.
Listen,
like
Jason Takes Manhattan rules.
Oh, I love that one. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can still bro out on that then.
Yeah, this is gonna be a screw it. I mean, like I said, there was really only like 2 that I viewed it on, and those were like the outliers of the whole franchise, and they pretty much didn't seem like they were part of it. So I don't really care about this. I think there's better found footage movies you can watch, and yeah, this is to me, like, there's just better franchises you can go through. You know, like you said, I was on your guys's A Nightmare on Elm Street one, and when I look at that, like, even the bad movies, like, there's like some fun in all of them, where this, it was just like dreading, like, oh my god, this is only an hour and 20 minutes. It seems like I've been here forever.
Yes.
So yeah, I feel like this isn't gonna bring anything to the table that you couldn't get somewhere else. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be a screw it for me.
All right. Well, we thought that we were gonna have a feud here, but in the end, we've agreed on this franchise. Unanimous screw it to the Paranormal Activity franchise. So before we wrap up this little journey, I will just remind you, as always, to check out our social media. We are at EHMONcast, EHMON Cast, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can check out our broken website that Chris keeps saying he'll fix. We're all wondering if that will ever happen. In the meantime, you can see its current state of disrepair at everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com. And you can click on the link to the merch store there to buy t-shirts and other goods and sundries with EHMON art on them. And lastly, please review us on your podcast provider of choice. We love to see the feedback, and it helps people find the show. Oh, I said that was lastly. It's actually not lastly. Please also check out our Discord if you want to talk about horror movies, the podcast, movies we review on the podcast, or just horror in general with other fans from around the world. We have a really lovely community out there, and we'd love you to be part of it. Rowan, would you like to give the quick pitch for It Slays? What is this podcast all about? How do people find it? How can they connect with you guys?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're pretty much on the same level. We're reviewing horror movies. We have a bunch of different shows on the go, so we have a bunch of different content you can go to. And, we're on Apple, Spotify, basically anywhere, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts. We're on all the different social medias. You named them, Facebook, Twitter. We're on everything. Slasher, Tumblr, Blue Sky, Threads, and, all of it. We're there. But yeah, you can go and listen to us just review whatever on our main show. Usually once a week, once every 2 weeks. We also have Now Slame, which Colton hosts. Usually I'm on, and that's where we review movies that come out like that day in the theater. We go see them and then come back with our initial thoughts. And you can also go to our Patreon, so patreon.com/itslayspodcast. And Jill hosts a show on there, Stream Screams, and that's where we go on Tubi and actually purposefully look for the worst horror movies possible to watch and hate ourselves and then record episodes talking about it.
So kind of like this episode.
Yeah, it's kind of like this, maybe even worse. I don't have as much fun, I'm sure. But yeah, that's pretty much all our stuff. It's Slays Podcast. Just Google it.
And depending on when I get this episode out, I will either have recently been on or will soon be on an episode where I will review Van Helsing with you guys.
Yeah. That'll be out in like 2 weeks, man. Like 2-3 weeks, I think.
Yeah, I mean, depending on when this comes out, it might be a very different time element. That's like we're going through the time portal in the ghost dimension right now to figure out when this episode's going to come out.
And I was going to say, even though Xylia is not always on the podcast, I'm sure, if she wants to plug it, she is going to be on It Slays Podcast again this month.
Yay. What are you going to be?
Do I want to plug it?
Yeah, what are you reviewing?
Yeah.
One of the Halloweens. I forget what number we're on now, but
We're on Halloween 5.
Oh,
Oh
God.
my gosh, it's been a while. So that's something we started when I was on the podcast originally. And then every Halloween, I mean, Halloween's like Christmas, right? So every Halloween I go on and do another Halloween. So
If it's
we'll see how it
Halloween,
goes. I've
it
never
must be
seen it.
Halloween.
Exactly.
What's your favorite one so far?
That's a good question. Probably. What's the one where the hospital and Ben Tramer like gets killed?
Two.
Yeah.
You really like 3 also. I think
Okay.
you gave that like a slay.
Maybe I don't remember, but
3 is a legitimate take. 2 is Crazy Town.
2 is actually also my favorite Halloween.
What?
So
What?
yeah,
is 2. Which is the one with Silver Shamrock?
That's 3.
yeah, that's 3.
Yeah. Okay, I love that one. Also,
Wait, how does the fucking
yeah.
song
2
go?
is Halloween 2 is the Friday the 13th of me coming out. So
As of when we're recording this, 28 days till Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. 28 days till Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Okay, I need to fucking put a fork in this. Thank you all so much for joining us for this crazy-ass journey. Thank you to everyone listening. Thank you to the 3 of you for doing this crazy shit. For every horror movie on Netflix, or every horror movie on A24, or every horror movie, Paranormal Activity movie ever, or whatever the fuck we're doing at this point, I'm Patrick.
I'm Allyson with a Y.
I'm Rowan.
I'm Xylia.
Love you all. Happy Halloween. Goodbye.